Hello and welcome. I'm Dee Wallace, a senior fellow with the Economic Opportunities Program at the Aspen Institute. We are so happy you're here to join us today for our webinar called Banking on Skills, Cara Collective and BMO Bank, Partner for Change. Our conversation today is part of the Workforce Leadership Academy Network, which brings together leaders of local workforce development ecosystems to learn and work together to advance economic opportunity. Before we get started, some tech. All attendees are muted. Please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to submit questions and upvote questions. And please use the chat throughout our time together to share resources, ideas, experiences related to today's topic. We encourage you to post about this conversation on the social media platform of your choice, and you can find us on all platforms at Aspen EOP. If you have any technical issues during the webinar, please message us in the chat or email us at eop.program@aspeninstitute.org. This event is being recorded and it will be posted on our website and sent out via email. And finally, closed captions are available for your use. Click the CC button at the bottom of your screen to activate them. So let's get started. So the Aspen Institute's Economic Opportunities Program has long recognized the power of cross-sector leadership to advance change. And our Workforce Leadership Academy has supported cohorts of fellows in 20 communities across the country to learn and share together across the for-profit, nonprofit, and public institutions that make up our workforce ecosystems. These leaders work at the intersection of personal leadership, organizational practice, equity and inclusion, and systems change in order to open doors to economic opportunity. Skills-based talent development holds promise to open more doors to good jobs and build ladders for good careers. Skills-based or skills-first approaches broaden the ways in which talent supply meets business demand by expanding sourcing of candidates, defining jobs qualifications in terms of specific skills and meaningful skills, and supporting employees in their ongoing development and skill building to advance economic mobility. Today, we are so pleased to welcome a wonderful panel of leaders to share their experiences advancing these skills-based practices. I'm so excited to welcome Liana Braun, Senior Director of Community and Employment Strategies at Cara Collective, Paris Romy of BMO Bank, and Lakita Burns of BMO Bank. We're also very grateful to have Liana Braun moderating this event. Liana is a Senior Director at Cara Collective, which is a workforce development agency and social enterprise that works to break the cycle of poverty through the power and purpose of work. In Chicago, Liana is focused on building sustainable employment partnerships to promote skills-based talent ecosystems to increase access to opportunity for these individuals. And she's also an alumni of the Chicagoland Workforce Leadership Academy. So thank you all for being here to share these experiences. We're so excited for the conversation. Over to you, Liana.
Thanks, Dee. And I just have to say, I am such a proud alumna of this fellowship network. For those fellows out there, I have sat where you sat, and I'm so excited by this opportunity to share a little bit about the work. So first, when it comes to skills-based hiring or skills-based practices, I think one of the biggest questions I hear from people is, how do you make it real? And when I say how do you make it real, it's both what are those specific practices? What are the specific processes you need to change in an organization to have it take hold? But beyond that, we've all heard about the best practice of removing degree requirements when it comes to skills-based hiring. But how does that actually change to real outcomes? When do we start to see organizations hiring differently, seeing different hiring outcomes? So it's for all of those reasons, I'm very excited to host this conversation with two incredible people and to highlight the work of an incredible partner, BMO Bank, who's figured out how to bring this to life. So I also want to share before we get started, just for a little bit of perspective, Cara has also a really unique vantage point in this story because our team, Cara Plus, works every day with employers to think about their practices, to think about how they have an impact and ability to reach untapped talent. And as a workforce organization, we get to see what happens when those organizations make practice changes, when they change their practices. And so at this point, working with BMO, not only have we seen those skills-based practices taking hold, we've also seen the results. We've seen and worked with BMO to hire more than 50 people from our talent pool. So again, this story really plays out with all of us here and with our incredible alumna, Lakita Burns, who's going to be able to share this story from all of our perspectives. So with that, Paris, I'm going to start with you. And I just want to ask this question of where did this story begin at BMO? Right. So we have this excellent case study that we co-produced together, which we'll be sharing in the chat later in the program. And it highlights this new associate banker role that you created and how you eliminated requirements as a barrier to banking and to entering this industry. So tell us a little bit about how BMO was able to embrace skills-based hiring, and tell us a little bit again about where this story started.
Sure. So this story really kind of started, and Be More really started as like a back of the napkin idea. It was something that one of my wonderful colleagues thought about because he had had experience within the workforce development world. So it was really BMO's opportunity to think differently about how we impact the communities we serve and how we combine our business objectives with our social goals and simultaneously do that through a new approach in hiring. We knew that by leveraging community partnerships, we could develop a really strong pipeline of talent based on the work that they do every single day. Then we were able to bring the idea to some of our executive leaders, and that really started to get things and put it in place because we needed the support of our executive leaders in order to make this work and in order to make it move forward. They saw the value in creating access to better paying jobs and high road careers through these community organizations, and that was able to spark some sustainable community impact. We also knew that for something like this to be successful, we would need to challenge the perspective of a lot of the stakeholders that are involved in the hiring process. So, bank managers, some of our hiring specialists, we needed to make sure that they understood what do these skills really look like? What does transferable skills look like at its core? And how do we morph them and understand them in a way where we can make people successful in these roles? And that's kind of where we started. We looked at our entry level roles, so our associate banker. So I think someone is going to pull up a slide and we'll kind of take a look at what we did from a skill perspective. So with Cara, we took a look at the role descriptions. We wanted to make sure that they were accessible to everyone. If you could look at the job description, sometimes they're really intimidating. I've looked at job descriptions and they're really intimidating. So we wanted to make sure that we outlined this so that it made sense and that people could, see themselves in these roles. And by doing this with Cara, we were able to make sure that they understood the core competencies that we were looking for these roles, and then being able to outline what type of skills they were going to look for in their program participants. This was kind of the result of that. So what you're seeing is we looked at 3 really core areas of how we assess skills: the existing skills that people have from either prior job experience or life experience, the ability to learn with our training and support, and the openness and adaptability to change, because we all know that everything changes all the time. So how were these individuals going to continue that process?
Yeah, and Paris, something that I so appreciate, because this is now kind of a legend at Cara in terms of how this process unfolded, because BMO had already done the work, right? For that job posting, the before state, you all had already made the decision that you were thinking about skills differently and thinking about what was most important in terms of the talent you wanted to hire. And then as the story goes from what I've heard at Cara is we were able to bring that original job posting to some of our participants who we knew would be successful. We knew they had those skills and we said, "Hey, you read this job posting, what do you see?" Right? And they said, "Well, there's these words like attestations in the job posting, and I don't know what that means, and I don't know if I would apply for a job like this." And so it was through some of that partnership that we really saw not only the power of the skills-based practice and the internal decision to hire differently, but then how do you translate that into a job posting, right? And so what I so appreciate about that after stated that job posting is as an organization, you make so clear not only what people need coming into the organization, but that you're willing to help people and are going to invest in building their skills over time. So that for us was just really exciting to see our feedback come to life in what you're all doing in BMO. And Lakita, I'm going to go to you in just a moment, but Paris, I want to stay for just another second and just double click on your call out about the work that had to be done internally to build support for change. So tell me a little bit more about that process because we know that the story starts in one place, there's all this interest and desire to make a change, but then it has to flow through different levels of leadership and the folks on the ground that are making it happen. So tell us a little bit more about how that unfolded and how you were able to get some support for those changes.
Yeah. So when this idea was brought forth to our executive leadership, it wasn't fully baked out. It was literally just an idea. How do we hire differently? How do we leverage the community partnerships? Because we did that intentionally to make sure that we could get broad perspectives on how we can make this work. Because for something like this to really take hold and plant roots within our organization, we needed stakeholders within different lines of businesses, within different realms of thought in order to push this forward. So that's really how it started. Be More is something that continues to evolve. We continue to seek opinions and thoughts from not only our community partners but our stakeholders. And one of the biggest pieces that something I will continue to reiterate throughout this conversation is multi layers, whether it's support, whether it's ideas, whether it's collaboration. This can't come from one source. It has to come from multiple leaders. And the way that it's continued to evolve over the last 5 years is that we've kept all of those individuals, those initial stakeholders involved, and then we've been able to bring in more. And, again, it's across multiple lines of businesses. So we have executive leadership, we have our retail branches, we have community giving, we have legal, we have communications, PR. I mean, there's really not a line of business that Be More doesn't have someone being able to voice their opinion and their thoughts for us to make, real progress and real change.
Yeah, absolutely, Paris. And we will come back to this theme about all these different layers that reinforce this work, right? Because it's not just about where you start, it's how you sustain those changes. Lakita, I want to go over to you because we've heard from the employer side of the equation in terms of how they were thinking about bringing more people into the banking industry. But I want to hear about your own journey to get to BMO. So tell us a little bit about what were some of your career prospects or aspirations before you started at BMO? And then what were some of the biggest barriers or things that maybe were preventing you from getting into an industry like banking before?
Yeah, sure. So some issues that I had, I'm gonna say issue, a perceived barrier. So I had taken some time off from, the marketplace to focus on raising my family, raising my children at the time. And as admirable as that was, I didn't realize how much of a challenge I would have going back into the marketplace when I was ready, right? So I applied to all the jobs. I have my Excel sheet. It was quite extensive. And when I did get, calls, I just wasn't getting the return on my investment that I thought I should, considering how much time and effort I had put into it. So through just some non-traditional methods, I came across Cara. And I was like, maybe I should consider it. But then I saw that they did karaoke there, and it really was a major turnoff. So a month later, it came back around again. I was like, you know what? Let me consider Cara, I think this may be the right space for me, considering all this work that I'm putting into it and not getting much of return back. And I am so glad I did, because I wasn't having that success on my own, but Cara really helped connect the dots for me. When I went through the cohort, they helped me realize and relate that things that I was already naturally good at, help fine tune some things that were there but just probably needed some work on, and allow me to see that I was already naturally good at finances, numbers. I already ran my household like to a T. It was a well-oiled machine, and these are some transferable skills that I can use not only in the marketplace but in a career in banking, and which is something I did not consider. I didn't think banking at all. But after some, coaching and some conversations, I really understood that this could be a good career move for me. And also, I have some background from running my own small business, and I use those skills all the time and helping my customers out on a regular basis here at BMO.
Yeah. Um, Thank you so much for sharing the start of your journey into banking. Um, for everyone who's not familiar with Cara, when Lakita talks about karaoke at Cara, which is actually sounds like an event we should do, we have a tradition at Cara called Motivations, which is about celebration, building confidence. So we challenge our participants to literally be at the center of a circle, answer a topic of the day, and lead the group in song. And that builds a number of skills, including public speaking and including building confidence and being able to command a room. And so, speaking of our morning motivations, Lakita, can you share about your morning motivations experience that was part of your hiring journey at BMO? And yeah, just fill us in terms of how BMO also participated at the back half of your hiring experience and saw some of those skills on display.
Yes, so I could only avoid getting in the circle and motivations for so long. Well, lo and behold, the time that I had to get in the circle, BMO was actually in the room with us. So they were able to see me, my whole, just me in whole, like the holistic version of Lakita, not just me just showing up as a representative. They were able to see the real me. So I was able to showcase my public speaking skills and just be myself. They were able to see areas of me that you wouldn't necessarily see on a resume. You wouldn't see and possibly in a one-on-one conversation, because Cara just has this special sauce about it that it brings it really, you guys have a great curriculum there, because it really just fine tunes and kind of dig out those things that whether you may want to hide them and think there may not be something people want to see. And so when I was in the circle, I was in for the motivations, and I'm telling my story. I answered the question of the day. They were able to see things in me they probably would have never seen, and it worked out because the market president for BMO, where I'm currently employed at now, she was there, and in that moment, she told me after, she's like, you know what? I knew I wanted to hire you. I knew you had to come on board with us during motivations. She's like, we're just doing this because, we have to, right? But I already knew you were on the team. This is during an interview, and I was really stumped. I was like, wow, I was really taken aback, but in the best way possible, because the one thing I was running from is the very thing that solidified my seat here against all of the other competition.
Mhm. Lakita, I love that. And so, a couple of things I want to point out from the stories you shared and both sides of the story. Paris, in terms of BMO, what I'm hearing was the start of this journey was really just an openness and curiosity to really examine the skills required to be successful in banking, right? Like, so we talked about this role, some of what it might look like is a lot of cash handling, but in reality, it's some of those skills can be taught on the job. So what are we looking for? And then on the other side of the story, Lakita, you showed all of those skills, and BMO could recognize them when they were on full display in that motivation circle, right? So it's both the ability and the openness for a company to consider different skills and what's needed to be successful, but then also a space for a candidate like yourself to be able to demonstrate those skills. So It's been exciting to see a little bit of that play out on both sides. So this conversation on skills-based often starts in hiring, but we don't always pull it through to just what happens beyond someone coming into an organization, coming in the door. So Paris, I want to go back to you to tell us a little bit about beyond the hiring process. How is BMO thinking about helping new hires be successful, to continue to belong? What are some of the shifts you've also made in terms of thinking about what comes next after hiring?
Sure. So many of the individuals that we welcome through the Be More program have never previously considered a career in banking. I've actually talked to a lot of leaders across the organization, and we all kind of consider ourselves accidental bankers because we kind of just ended up here based on some of the skills we had, myself included. So, you begin this journey with some hesitation and some limited confidence around interacting with more tenured colleagues and trying to figure out where you fit and how you utilize those skills that you're coming in with. And so from the outset, we really see that individual's first day as the starting point. Yes, we want to hire people, but we want to retain people. It's the beginning of a much longer journey in order for us to create lasting change. Through Be More, our goal was not to simply just fill positions, but to really, invest in people who could, help meet future organizational needs through growing in their career. In the retail leadership and branch environment, that's the foundation of where all of this starts. So for us and, from, the Be More program management piece, it's important to make sure we're engaging those leaders before that first day, because we are not just giving support to our Be More colleague, we're giving our support to the leaders that are getting ready to take in the talent to make sure that they understand, the training that these individuals went through, the time that they put in, because it is important for them to recognize that these individuals are coming in with, additional skills based on the community partner that they came from. And, this dual focus approach really allows us to have stronger relationships with the managers, but also with the employees. And it also builds like that mutual groundwork and understanding of these individuals and where they're coming from. And then this is my favorite part. So after about 90 days, we start Be More Bound, which is a very, structured post-employment programming that, they're very small groups, basically 10 individuals. And this allows for us to learn more about them, their skills, their strengths, their weaknesses. It allows us to help teach them how to action plan, and then also give them a bigger view about what's available at BMO from a career standpoint. That's how I met Lakita, was through leading a Be More Bound group. And, this program, I take a lot of pride in. And every time I have one of these sessions with these individuals, I walk away with a new understanding or a new appreciation for my job, and then also everything that these individuals have had to go through. Whether you're coming through a traditional channel or whether you're coming through Be More, everybody's got stuff with them, but how do we use it and how do we bring it forth in the work? So between Be More Bound and then making sure that we're working closely with our leaders, that's two parts of it, right? The other piece is continued involvement with the community partner. So every time we take on a new partner or we expand into a new footprint, we are asking these partners to stay engaged with the individuals for at least 12 months, because it allows us to make sure that the retention piece is top of mind. You never know what's going on in somebody's life, and sometimes you just need somebody else's voice, potentially an external voice, to help put things back on track. An example is if somebody's having some issues with attendance or tardiness, we're able to reach out to the community partner and say, hey, based off your relationship, can you reach out and see what's going on so we can better support the individual? We've seen this happen time and time again, and being able to rely on that community partner allows for both internal and external support for each one of these individuals. And I think it is appreciated by everybody coming through the Be More program. Like, hey, I'm not on this island by myself. No career is built by yourself. Using your external and internal resources are important for everybody's growth. So we continue to monitor and align with our Be More Bound process, but also everything that goes into those first few months, that first year, we're very focused on because we want to keep each one of these individuals that we're bringing into the organization.
Thanks, Paris. When we were talking about this, something that I realized that, from an employer business perspective, a lot of what you shared in terms of what that leads to is retention, which is so top of mind for employers. So, you can bring that lens to all the different pieces of Be More is focused on hiring and then supporting retention. If you layer on this kind of skills-based strategy that we'd all been talking about, or kind of how we started this conversation, what seems so important or kind of core to what makes retention happen is you're investing in the skill building of the individuals coming through the program, right? So not just helping with the cash handling or the other technical aspects of the role, but you're helping people build skill to navigate their own careers, to advocate for themselves. So that's happening on one hand. And then I also heard you talk about how you're building leadership skills and management skills of those in the branches as well, right? Helping them understand what it takes to be a leader and to support talent, and all that means. So really appreciate you sharing that. Lakita, now I want to go and hear from your perspective. Since you started at BMO, how have you seen your own skills evolve? And how has BMO been helpful in that process? What resources, supports have helped you be successful in banking?
Whew, okay, I'll keep it short.
You don't have to, we
So,
want to hear it.
so BMO, I work in the largest branch in our market here. It's a Lakeshore market within BMO. And the level of traffic that we see on a day-to-day basis can be overwhelming at the it's an understatement. So being that I get to it's I see the blessing in that, right? Because since I work in the largest branch, there's never a dull day. It's always something that is the new, exciting, fun. And then in that, I get to reach a very large population of people that I probably would have never been able to even have a conversation to or nothing at that personal level. And I get to fine tune those relationship building skills that I already have, but each customer I get to reset. So someone else comes in front of me. If maybe I'm mentally thinking like, how could I have made that interaction better? And if something comes to mind, the next person, I'm actively working on that with the next customer. And considering we're in a large branch, I don't have time to sit and like wallow in that, oh, I made a mistake or this didn't go so well. It's happening real time, real fast. I have to reset. And yes, it can be overwhelming. It can be a lot, but it's also fine tuning what I already have to make it something that's good to great. And I'm really thankful for that opportunity because there aren't a lot of branches that have the level of traffic that we have. So I get real time and feedback multiple times in the day to see how I'm progressing, not just for the things that can be measured, on my scorecard, like, it's the quantitative and qualitative. I get both of those on a regular basis daily.
Yeah. It sounds overwhelming. I mean, I know if I were trying to count and handle money while people are talking, that's not me. I don't know if I could be a successful or accidental banker. One thing you shared with me, Lakita, you talked a little bit about your experience in Be More Bound and how that was a safe landing space to kind of digest some of what was happening. And maybe without having that space, you or others may not have persisted. You may have said, okay, I tried banking, we're done. So I'm curious if you can tell me a little bit more about how that Be More Bound, those sessions together, how did that help you be successful in your role and help you have that support?
Well, I am truly thankful for the Be More program. I highly recommend every employer, company, non-for-profit, however you are, to please emulate something of that sort, because that was a home away from home within my workplace. So we had Paris was there. She had also a co-host and other men and women who were sharing similar positions, new to BMO, that we can just come and just be ourselves, right? However that looked in that moment. If you were having a bad day, if you had some, Paris mentioned it earlier, like if certain things outside of work that were really negatively impacting you, what's going on? Let's talk about it. Okay, now what can we do to ensure that this isn't affecting your work? Or how can we best support you? And that is priceless, because you don't get that in a lot of different places. You just kind of just have to suck it up, buttercup, and show up and perform. And you're almost like a puppet, right? And people don't get the whole authentic you. They get your representative in that moment, right? But I cannot it's difficult to show up and be my best self when I don't feel my best self. But I had a place where I can, I'm not feeling great, guys. This is what's going on. Here's why. And then I had a whole team that was able to pour back into me to make sure that when I was back customer facing or with my colleagues or management, Lakita was able to present her best self. And for that, it's amazing. It's awesome. It's great. I don't think I have enough adjectives to explain how amazing the BMO program is. Thanks, BMO.
Yeah. And that's so
program.
That's so real, because in this particular role, you have like a really unique opportunity where you're getting live feedback every day. I heard you say, like, you're refining because you get immediate feedback from
Absolutely.
dozens of people every day. And in the kind of spirit of kind of developing skills, building skills, sometimes you have this kind of maybe soundtrack in your head. If it was just you getting that feedback and figuring out what to do with that,
Absolutely.
that's challenging. But having this space really seems like it was an opportunity to process and kind of reinforce maybe some of that skill building that was happening. So just awesome to hear about that.
Yes, if I had to coin a term for it, I would probably
Yeah.
say productive therapy.
I think we could all use a little bit more of that. Just productive therapy. Sign me up. I had one more question though here, because something else I heard from you, Lakita, in terms of what has been helpful in your career in banking and BMO is the support, that reinforcement, and then also exposure to different career pathways and to being encouraged to talk to your leadership about your interest. So tell us a little bit more about what that has looked like and what impact you've seen that have on yourself, but also it sounds like maybe that's impacted other colleagues or managers.
Absolutely. So yes, Be More was amazing. Well, is amazing for having those real conversations when we needed it most. But it also shined a light on what's next. Like, okay, this is where we are, but where do we want to go and how do we get there? Here's the path. So in that we did skills, strength training, skills assessment. Yeah, I can't even think of the name of it. Please forgive me. Strengths finder. Thank you. There we go. So we did that. We did it and just to figure out, maybe uncover some things that you had that maybe you weren't aware of, or maybe some things that you thought you had that you really aren't that strong in. And let's focus on the things that can get you where you need to be. And in that process, I learned where it was two paths I wanted to go. Like, okay, so where can I get to, like, the fastest, right? Which works best for me. Paris is really instrumental in ensuring that I stayed on task. And she's like, all right, come on, let it out. Now, this is what we're going to do. Here's the passion. She's like, whatever you want to do, I'll support you. I'm like, okay. I hear her, in my self-talk also includes Paris in my ear with that, right? And in that, I found that yes, I have some skills like retail, maybe the route that I need to stay in, and where do I want to be in retail, and how do I get there? How long is that going to take? Because when you're going through these day-to-day, challenges, it's easy to just get lost in it and not realize that we have a bigger picture at stake here, right? So just shake it off for just a day, just one day at a time. You eat an elephant one bite at a time, same thing, right? So if we were in a jungle, of course, right? But in that, so I figured out the career path that I wanted. So I brought it to my managers. And they were just blown away. They were taken aback. They're like, Lakita, no one else is having these conversations. No one else is talking to us about what next steps are. We had several, colleagues of mine that have been in the same role for several years, and they did not even consider something else. They were just completely comfortable where they are. And yet you have me, I'm only in there a few months, and I'm talking about what my, to short term, mid-term and then long-term goals and where I wanted to be. And they really didn't know where to take it. They're like, okay, well, give us some, so we'll get back to you. Give us a few days, we'll circle back. And it prompted a conversation with my market president. She got involved. She was really excited because she was able to connect me with some people within the company that's actually in those roles. I can get real-time information like, okay, what's good, what works out great. How did you get to where you are, and how do I get to where I want to be, right? Finding out what that works for me, because their path may not be my path, but we gave me some different options. And in doing so, I've made some real great connections with other people who aren't in my branch. So I have it's just, the branches of like people who I could reach out to and have access to really broaden. And in me doing that, I'm now hearing conversations from my colleagues about where they want to go. They've heard about, no one was speaking about the program about, that I brought from the Be More, community. And now they're signing up for the same things that I've inquired about, that I've had conversations with my managers. No one was doing that. Now everyone's doing it now. So I hear and I see that. Of course, I just keep it to myself. But I'm like, okay, I'm making some positive change here. And that definitely is because of the Be More program.
Yeah, that's so exciting to hear, Lakita. And something that I'm noticing is it's this growth, right? It's how big changes within organizations happen, right? First, it starts maybe with an individual impact, but then other people start to feel it and see it, and it grows. So with that, Paris, I want to go back to you to talk about where BMO is now, because I don't want to steal your thunder, but there's been some growth. And before you answer, I also just want to name that we're in such a different moment than where we were when the Be More program started, right? Now, every day I hear someone talking about AI and how I need to use it more, which, that's a whole other story. But of course, we're in a very different economic and political context. So tell us a little bit more about not only where the program is at, but how, you and your team have really thought about what to grow, what to change, and how you've been able to persist, or why you've persisted given everything that has happened around us.
Absolutely. I am really lucky to work for an organization that embraced this idea and continued to push it forward. That hasn't changed. The support hasn't lessened for Be More. If anything, it's grown, just like the program itself. So we started in Chicago. We're now in Milwaukee, Madison, Denver, Indianapolis, Fremont, California, Phoenix, and Los Angeles. I had to think about all of the cities because there's so many. And we are launching in one of our final retail regions within the next couple of weeks. And then notably, last year we hit our highest retention in the program yet, so 74%, which is extremely strong for 1-year retention when we're talking about creating pipelines through our community partners. And I think, a lot of what Lakita said about Be More Bound is that we try to make sure we continue to stay engaged, because I think where we start to lose people is when we lose connection with individuals, especially within those small groups. People start to feel a little bit lost because BMO is so big. So we continue to see that evolution of retention and growth. We've had multiple promotions, people being put into development pathways. We've seen retail relationship bankers happen, virtual connect, also a wealth analyst, all from this program. And while the world is always changing, we are always going to need to hire. Talent acquisition is not something that's going away. It's something that we need to continue to get better at, meeting the needs of our communities and all of these applicants and all of the candidates. And the way that we do that is we continue to evolve. The world is changing. talent acquisition is not. And we need to make sure that we're continuing to meet people, where they are. And, again, I have to boast about the organization that I work for, because we have this mission statement: boldly grow the good in business and life. And to me, the Be More program does that in every single way. We're not just, it's not necessarily about what we're getting from a return on investment standpoint. It's about what are we doing to impact the communities we serve, and how are we ensuring that the branches and customers that we serve are reflected in our colleagues. People want to go into a branch where they see themselves. People want to go into a branch where they feel like they can have conversations with individuals with similar backgrounds with them. And I think Be More is one of those really key ways of doing that. And so the work will continue. The investment is there because I have a job and I love my job. I get to lead programs like this and continue to make sure that we continue to put the impact in our communities side by side with our business objectives, and continue to, grow the good.
Yeah, Paris, that's so powerful, because I remember, when we were talking about where this story began, sometimes new business or talent strategies come from a really clear business need. And in what you described, there was just this commitment to thinking about your engagement in community. And now I see where we are here and how the program has grown. And I see two things. I see that continued investment and just the clear business value, right? So now we're looking at like you said, the good in say it again for me, Paris. Say it again for all of us. What is BMO's motto?
Growing the good in business and in life. And
Yes,
I forgot to
there
say,
it is.
we've hired over 200 individuals through this program. I can't believe I didn't mention that number, but over 200 individuals across our retail footprint.
Absolutely. So it is not only a community engagement strategy, but also talent acquisition and, as we heard, retention, mobility strategy for BMO. So that's so exciting to hear. For those of you who have been following along in the chat, we've been dropping in some resources. I'll invite you to keep an eye on that, because you'll see a couple of different opportunities and articles that are going to give you the double click on this BMO story, not only in terms of where it started, but again, this incredible growth. So just keep an eye on the chat for that. And with that, I'm going to ask my panelists one more question, and then we'll go to questions from the audience. Lakita, simple question. What advice do you have for people in the audience, knowing that there are other educators, training providers, practitioners? What advice do you have for them in terms of helping their job seekers pursue new careers or growth in new industries, just like you had it in your experience with BMO and Cara?
Sure. Well, I would highly recommend for them to look for ways to find things that will reflect those individuals in ways that best support the company, but you can't really find through your AI search engine, right? Those keywords or what's on their resume or whoever it was that referred them. There's so much more to a person that makes who they are. Like me, like Be More program allows me to show up as me in my most holistic way, in my most authentic way. And I believe other companies, they can implement something like that or work with people who implement something like that, like Cara, because that was the first, for me. They started the fine tuning process, right? And just keeping the open mind for looking for different things that may not be as traditional to help support their teams. And you might find some of your best talent right there.
Love that. Paris, what advice would you have for the audience, knowing that they are both employers themselves, but also maybe nonprofits or other groups trying to connect with employers?
I think it's important to know that this is not a short-term goal. It can't be one thing. It has to continuously evolve. And, making sure that there is some accountability to not only the individuals that are going through the program, but to our partners and to our internal stakeholders. We need to make sure that we're looking at this on a regular basis to figure out how we evaluate and how we continue to push everything forward. BMO embraced this idea because it made sense, because it aligned with what we wanted to do from a social and community aspect. And that's what we've continued to do. As we find new partners, as we continue to move forward, we're having regular conversations with our Be More participants, with our community partners, with our leaders to figure out what more do we need to do in order to take this from program to practice. That's always been my goal as I got into this role. How do we make sure that our community partners are seen as, hey, they have a pipeline full of talent that's ready to go for us. We have more information about these individuals because we know where they're coming from. And I think that has continued to shift for us. That's what we're able to tell managers, like, hey, this individual went through 8 weeks of training specifically around, financial and banking. How much do we know about traditional candidates that are coming through our pipeline? Not as much. So it gives us an opportunity to say, we trust our partner, we trust the work that they've done, and that trust has to continue to build, which means there's ongoing collaboration. And one of the things I will continue to mention is multi-layered. You have to look at things from multiple perspectives. You have to gain multiple perspectives all at once in order to get the results and then also continue to make the impact.
Thanks, Paris. I think this is the point in our program we get to open it up to the audience. So Dee, what questions are bubbling to the surface?
So I think we've been keeping an eye on the questions, and this is one for you to start with. I think, Leanna, a big question broadly about skills-based strategies. I know you've worked with a number of industries, and the question is, how do you see some criticism that skills-based strategies might devalue traditional degrees and traditional credentials? How do you see that working in the field?
Oh, it is such a good question, and something that comes up a lot. I would say from my perspective, number one, I think it's important to have, as Paris just talked about, different perspectives, different people in the room really talking about what we mean by skills-based hiring, right? So kind of how I've understood it and how I talk about it is we're really focused on skills no matter where they come from, and being able to more equally value that someone may have gotten skills from a 4-year institution. They may have gotten those skills from work experience. They may have gotten those skills from life experience. And so how can we work with employers to really focus on skills and understanding and assessing the skills themselves versus where they got them. And if you come at it from that approach, then it's really, again, seeing that universities, colleges, all kinds of institutions are important partners in building skills, right? There are certain pathways, careers that are going to require that level of education, and those partners are best positioned to provide it. So it's really, we're all in this together. It's just trying to figure out the different ways. As Lakita said, how do we figure out what skills someone has outside of how they're showing up on a piece of paper, or how AI is able to process that information, right? So that's kind of how I've come at it and how I understand it.
You. And one question that just really fundamental is, how can organizations get started with skills-based hiring and skills-based strategies, both culturally and technically? What advice would you have for
Ooh,
just
great question. Paris, I wonder if you might start us off with that question.
Yeah, if I think about where Be More started, it again was just an idea. It wasn't fully baked yet. So I think in order to really start something like this, it's organizational change. So it's not something that's just going to impact one aspect of our business, it's multiple aspects. You have to be able to take this idea or this thought and gain other perspectives in order to move it forward, because then you're going to have the buy-in of every individual that you sought advice from or thoughts from in order to move it forward and in order to make it work for your organization. What we do at BMO is incredible. And, not every organization is the exact same, but something like this, focusing on the individuals and the skills they're bringing to the table, is important. And multiple people within, the world of banking, myself included, I could have very easily been a Be More participant. I didn't come from a financial banking background. I, was on the lower income side of things. Sometimes, you just need help getting to that next place. And a lot of the time, when we talk about Be More, we talk about it as the village that kind of helps get you there. They're the link to, for Lakita, Cara was the link to BMO in order for us to get her. And, making sure that you have trust with your community partners is another piece of that. Make sure you trust the curriculum and what they do with their participants. And then also focusing beyond that first day. How do we continue to keep these individuals engaged and keep them retained and then help them grow?
I think one thing I would add is with skills-based practices, I think Paris, I think you called this out. There's kind of like two parts of this. There's the technical challenges, but I think more often when we're starting, it's the people, it's the getting the buy-in, right? That's where I see time and time again, people often get caught up the most when they're starting skills-based strategies, is it's less the technical solve and just figuring out how to get people on board and do things pretty differently, right? Hiring managers will say, well, my best candidates are the ones that might have X, Y, and Z degree. If I'm trying to fill a role and our, productivity, business outcomes are on the line, and I have a million other things, how am I going to get that hiring manager to do something different, right? Do something differently. And kind of with that in mind, I would say start small, start with one role and have really deep and genuine conversations. What are the skills that we think someone needs to be successful in this role? Do they have to have those skills when they come in? Can we play a role like BMO did in helping to build those skills and provide the training? And if you need to start that process with one role, I think it's helping to build that organizational muscle and just then holding yourselves accountable, right? You can have all those great hiring practices, updating the job descriptions, and if it doesn't flow through all the way through the hiring process and engaging hiring managers, you're just not going to see the outcome. So start small is probably my biggest tip.
Great. Another question, and related to something that you brought up, is the question about the partnership between BMO and Cara. And the question is, what was BMO looking for in a community partner that led them to Cara? As we look at our
Paris. Oh, sorry, sorry. I have my ideas of why you might like to partner with an organization like Cara, but Paris would love to hear your thoughts on this.
We knew the level of investment that Cara took with each one of their participants. We knew that there was an in-depth learning about each one of these individuals, and that, again, that engagement past day one, and that engagement, as long as the Cara participant wanted to be engaged, they were there. I've heard multiple stories about Cara, about, how individuals can walk in and feel cared for and feel seen and feel heard. And I think for us, selecting and working with Cara as our flagship partner made the most sense. We knew the impact to not only the community, but the individuals that were going through the program. They were able to be open and were willing to hear us out, and then also being able to work and collaborate with the job descriptions, what we were kind of looking for. And they continue to do that to this day. We continuously have conversations with Cara and with all of our partners about how do we help support you, and then how do they help support us. And because there's been such an open line of communication and collaboration since the onset, we chose the right partner first, and it's really helped us lay the groundwork on how we continue to choose partners as we move forward.
Before we close out, Liana, I'll leave it to you if you have any closing comments with Lakita or Paris.
Yeah. I think the last thing I'll share, because I've really had this opportunity, Cara Plus has had this opportunity to kind of sit between employer partners and practitioners and training providers. And I think it's exactly, Paris, what you said. It's being able to have those conversations and for both sides to understand the needs. I think workforce development practitioner, one of the things that have served us best is just really building that relationship and understanding how we can provide value. So I think that starts with having a good relationship and having a good communication. And as Lakita has said over and over again, like we're just so grateful for BMO as well for just that willingness to engage. I think it takes a special organization to do that as well.
And in our conversations leading up to this time, I was telling Lakita, I was just writing down beautiful snippets of what the kind of advice that she had for organizations and companies to increase opportunity and ladders for folks. Lakita, is there anything that you would say to close out your comments?
Well, I would just say, culture is major. Culture is key. And I would strongly encourage those who are in the position of hiring to really focus on that because people feel it immediately. You can give all the accolades and the warm welcomes and things of that nature. But when you can walk into a room and you can feel the tension,
Mm.
or you can feel like the love, you can feel the teamwork, you can feel whatever it is, positive, negative, you can feel it. And it's also one of the hardest things to change. Culture is really difficult to explain. It's really difficult to write down. It's really difficult to change, but it's really easy to to feel, right? So I really believe if companies focus as much as on retention as they do with hiring, you can invest into your employees that way and then create those safe spaces like the Be More program. It goes so much more beyond just an affinity group or employee resource group. It really hones into that holistic person, right? That whole person, and gives them those safe spaces. So if they're having a bad day, especially in industries that have high turnover, you really want to focus on your key players that you already have there. It costs so much to hire. It takes so much energy, resources, time to bring on new talent, which is good to have new talent. But if you also just pour in to the ones you already have, you may not have to expend so much of those dollars on bringing in new people.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your advice. And thank you all for joining us today. And thank you to our amazing panel for so generously giving of your experience and insights and your time with us. If you want to learn more about BMO's skills-based hiring strategy and skills-based mobility strategies, you can access a case study that was jointly produced by Cara Plus and BMO, and we're push putting that in the chat. We'll also be providing some additional resources as a follow-up to this recording. We are so grateful to the team at the Economic Opportunities Program for this event, including Haley Glover, the head of Upskill America and a key leader in the skills-based movement who helped shape today's event. Big thanks, as always, to our wonderful comms team, Francis, Nora, and Tony, and to Architects for production of today's event. We hope you will join us for our next event coming up on Thursday, October 9th for our Job Quality and Practices webinar, Big Impact, Big Challenges, Lessons from Collaborating with Large Businesses to Improve Job Quality. Certainly relevant to today's conversation where we've been talking about opening doors and building ladders to continue this conversation about raising the floor of jobs that can advance economic mobility. Thank you again, Lakita, Paris, Liana, and we hope to see you again soon.